Hello and welcome back to Homeschool. Together we're doing a little bit of a wrap-up of our trek in the world as we have gone through, what was it, the last like 7, 9, 10 months or something like that? What is it?
Yeah, so we didn't do quite as many weeks in the normal curriculums. So the first time we did this, we did Torchlight K and Build Your Library Zero. We put them together and we did everything. And it was
almost
like
70 weeks?
it was like a year and a half,
Year,
65, something like
like
that.
that. It was long.
It was very long. We decided this time we didn't have that kind of time to do both of them. We wanted to keep it to just one school year. And though we really liked the structure of Build Your Library, we had read some of those books before and we were kind of struggling with, well, we want to add in an older student. There were some parts of Torchlight we really liked. So in the end, we really changed it up. We decided to condense by just choosing our favorite countries. So we didn't follow either of the curriculums in their exact order. So Build Your Library goes continent by continent through a selection of countries in the continent. Torchlight just hops all around the world. So we did the first time around, we went continent by continent. This time we just hopped around to where we thought was cool. I think there are definite pluses and minuses.
Yeah, we've always talked about that as kind of like, you got to choose which one you're going to do. And I remember last time when we went through that, when you're going just methodically through, you end up hitting some regions where they're all very similar, and you just feel like you're in the same area over and over. And sometimes you wanted to freshen it up. And I feel like doing the hopping felt a little bit better because it always felt something fresh, something new. It was always interesting. There was always new books to read, new cultures to explore, some new place to point to on the globe, and all that type of stuff. I kind of like that one a little bit better. I'm kind of leaning in that direction.
So I'm a little torn because while we liked it more, it was a little bit more exciting for us. Our girls definitely did not know where we were. So it was very difficult to keep reorienting them. So I think that this one might be more dependent on your learners.
Our older learner was cool with it. I think it was the younger one.
She was 9 for this.
Constantly having to pull out the globe. We had the big color map of the world where she was coloring in things. And so she was, at the beginning of wherever we were studying, she would go ahead and color that region. So she did kind of get an idea of where it was, but I was always having to like point back, like, where do we live? And she kind of like, it took a little while for her to just keep remembering that, hey, we're over here, now we're here, we're here, we're over here.
Whereas I think our older daughter, when we did this the first time around, she was 6. You could ask her where some of the countries were, and she would remember. Like she knew South America as a continent, and in South America, these are a couple of the countries, right? It wasn't like she didn't know it all, but I think our daughter now, we could be like, "Where's France?" and she'd be like, "I don't know." So I think she had a lot of fun with the study because we did jump around. But as far as remembering and orienting herself, I think that definitely falls by the wayside.
Yeah.
So it might be up to the temperament of your child. Yep. Our younger daughter is definitely a want to get on to something new and exciting person. Our older daughter is just fine with going all into all the detail. And you may have been bored by the end of South America, but she never was. She loved it. She was like, yeah, well, let's go country by country. So
that kind of goes to what you kind of said with, which is the sensibilities of the student.
Right.
I noticed with what we did here, it was better to be shorter and not as long as the thing because our youngest doesn't have the stamina that our oldest did at the same age. And I really was very aware of this almost right out the gate. I realized, wow, she has a limit to the number of books I can read to her in a day. She has a limit to the amount of books and interest of a country over the course of a week. So where we used to like overload our oldest when we did the first around the world, and we would have stacks and stacks of books.
She would just sit. If you wanted to read to her for 2 hours,
she would totally do that.
She'd just sit and let you read to her.
My youngest, definitely not. So if you are sitting here and you're watching this video and you're thinking, well, is this around the world, mashup going to be great for me? Should I get a ton of extra books? It's really up to your learner. It felt like a different journey, very, very different journey because we just didn't have as many books, and we didn't spend as much time reading. She was more the visual. She wanted to try the foods. She wanted to watch the movies. She wanted to do the artwork, and she wasn't as big into the books as I would have expected. So
she did like the books.
It got better and again, that's because you do these types of journeys with your student. and they age along with the
Right.
curriculum.
She was 5 for most of it, whereas
Most of
our
it.
older daughter was 6 when we did
Yeah.
it.
So there's a little bit different there, and I don't know. It'll be
Yeah.
very interesting in here in the next year when we do our space science and all that stuff, and we get back into ancients. If our youngest kind of matures a little bit and becomes a little bit more interested in like
Yeah.
reading longer books, I'm starting to look ahead and realize with ancients I did a lot of like chapter book reading, and I'm sitting there going, I don't know if our youngest is going to be into that as much as our oldest was. So that's going to become kind of an interesting thing for us to examine. And so if you're at home thinking like, oh, how do I plan for this? What is my kid like? Definitely make the consideration on like sensibilities, especially early on, and then you can change it over the course of the curriculum, and you make adaptation. You can adapt to what your child needs. But I almost right out of the gate, I just realized, wow, she doesn't have nearly the same stamina. But other places she does. It's kind of strange. It's like she'll sit there and color and do a lot of the art activities for a long period of time. But reading 3 or 4 books to her was, okay, that's enough. And they're children's books, right? So it's like, I'm done, Dad.
She
Let's
did
do
really
something else.
well with books. Whenever we knew it was something real, like we could read a book, and I would tell her like,
Yeah, that's a great point.
hey, we're going to watch a video about this when we get done reading the book. She was much happier to sit through that book.
She liked that pairing, like the book and something to watch. That's maybe just what she enjoys, what she really connects with. And I noticed that she will connect better with the book if there is some type of multimedia to kind of go with the book, that she can then remember. She kind of has like the multiple modalities that she enjoys when she's learning something, whatever concept it might be. Just sitting there getting read to, my oldest could learn a ton of stuff that way. So it was really different. It was cool. It was kind of different, yeah.
I think when you're looking at what books you're going to get, obviously we've talked about the books we've used this go around. We've talked about them last go around. There we have our great resource guides. If you haven't checked those out yet, they're in the link below, and they give lots of other books and lots of great multimedia options. When you're choosing a book, I think it's less important to choose this particular book, right? There's lots of good books to choose. Maybe, choose less books, but choose ones you think your learner's going to be most interested in. There were some times where we were like, well, the curriculum says this and everyone's raving about this book, and we would get it. And sometimes it wouldn't be as big a hit for our daughters, whereas something that we knew struck a chord with them because it's something they might be interested in was much better. So, I would not obsess about getting exactly the book that's called out in the curriculum.
That's a good point.
If you can, it's at your library, whatever, great. I wouldn't break the bank going out and buying all of these different picture books because the curriculum says, I need this one. Because if there's anything that we've learned over doing this twice now, it's that there's a lot of good books. So, you can find something at your library which can correspond to that country or a famous person from that country or a food that's popular there. Make a connection. I hate to see people going out and spending, and I did this, right? I bought most of the books. And I got some of them used, and I got deals on some of them and things. But I hate people saying like, oh my gosh, I have to go and buy $400 worth of books now so I can do Build Your Library or Torchlight. I just don't think that any of the books are that irreplaceable. I think some of the spines are quite good, right? You're going to need a really good atlas. And we did a fantastic series of videos. We did spines and alternate spines, which you can link below in in YouTube. And we talked about all different types of spine books. So you definitely need a few good spine books. You need a good atlas. I think the Children Like Me book is one of the best books you can get. If there was one I was going to really spend money on, I'd probably spend it there because our kids really connected with kids from other cultures.
And there's a bunch of books on celebrations and cultural
There's
events.
tons
and
of
stuff.
different ones. So you pick one that your library has.
And all through our videos about trekking around the world, we were constantly checking different ones out from the library and just opening it up to that whatever that festival or that cultural event. It doesn't have to be one book to rule them all type of thing.
Right. Yeah. Just because there are some that are called out, I don't know. I don't think that it's totally necessary that you use that. Find something that your library has that works for you.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest, takeaway point is really embrace your library. And I knew it was always kind of funny because we were always getting into the next country, and you would go to, the library system and start seeing. You first start looking for the books that were, recommended for that week.
Or the ones we liked last time.
The ones we liked last time. We'll check our user guides, and we'll check our resource guides and see if there's anything there. If it's something's for some reason not available, just a simple little search, and you can find a secondary book or a third order book that can help fill that gap. Maybe you'll get the number one book that's recommended for that week, but you need to have like one or two other ones. You can find books that fit into that country or into some theme or maybe some biome that we'll talk about in a few minutes. Finding those books is really just, finding something that fits into what you're trying to do, I think is important.
So what I tried to do is I tried to go a few countries ahead. I tried to be like 2 countries ahead in my library stuff, but both with holds, like at least a country ahead with holds, but like 2 countries ahead in planning, in terms of planning, looking at what my library had. And if they didn't have the things that I wanted, there was a few great books that, like you talked about, I think Gettel's Journey on the last, our library didn't have that anymore. There's a couple of that where I don't know if those books got checked out, never returned or whatever, but they didn't come back to our library, and I was bummed because I was like, oh, those were some of our favorite books last time. So I needed to give myself time to find alternates.
And about how much time, like if they're at home, how much time do you spend on that? I mean, is it 10, 15 minutes? I mean, is it a lot of time?
I would say per country, I probably spent like an hour, but you could do it a little shorter. But I was looking at what books were we going to do, what recipe was I going to make, because we mostly cooked out of the Cooking Class Global Feast book from Build Your Library, which is a great book. But there were a few recipes in there we didn't really like, or I knew our kids weren't going to get into. So we would, I would go ahead and find something else on Pinterest or from another book that we wanted to make instead. So it's like, okay, I got to find the recipe, and I'm going to figure out the books we're going to get from the library, try to come up with an experience that will go with it, which we can talk more about, and then try to find some media. And I could do it all in about an hour. In previous years, I have done planning with Trello. I tried planning with Notion. I've done a few different things. This one I just did in Google Drive. I felt like that was the easiest thing to do. I just put it into a Word document and just kind of filled out what we were going to do. So it didn't take me too much time. And I felt like that was just enough planning. I definitely didn't crack open the curriculum other than looking at the book lists for either of those 2 curriculums. Not that they're not great. And if you want something to go through, either one of them are fantastic. Totally great. I think book quality-wise, Build Your Library is a stronger curriculum than Torchlight.
Agree.
And you could still hop around countries if that's what you want to do. Just make sure that your weeks, some chapter books are multi-week. So make sure that you figure out how you're going to spread those. But otherwise, I think if you want to just go it yourself and come up with what's interesting to you, I think that was my favorite thing about this study, was that we didn't do any countries that we weren't interested in.
Yeah, it didn't feel like we were cramming stuff in. It didn't feel rushed at all.
It felt rushed last time because it was like, I got to get on to the next one.
Well, especially when you're getting to the end there, you're just like, okay, let's get this. I mean, we've been doing this for so long.
This one was like, what kind of food do we really want to eat? What kind of really neat cultural thing do we want to share with our kids? And so that's how we chose countries. Like, what family heritage do we have? Well, we got to study this because we've got heritage. That
could be a little difficult if you're trying to do the outings. I mean, that aren't just like, we're going to that, that food truck or whatever. If you're trying to time it with certain events or festivals, that can be a little bit more challenging, a little bit more stressful because we got to hit this week, right?
And that is what we did.
And we did that a lot of times, but it was, you had built it so that like, okay, so you have a pool of like 25, 30 countries you want to hit. And you said, okay, here's the 15 that I know we have events for. So we'll just go ahead and put those in. And then every single week we go by, you say, okay, well, we're not going to do China this week because that's Chinese New Year's. In a couple of weeks, we'll time it for that. Just pull off the stack of, country that doesn't have a cultural event going on.
Let's do Antarctica now.
Yeah, we'll just slide it in. You kind of had these like 2 tiers. You had the countries that had definitive dates that we probably need to do them on that week. And then you had this stack of countries that we could just pull in on however we felt that week. Like, hey, I'm feeling German food this week. Let's do it,
And that was actually really fun. I liked not being locked into something.
It was funny because you would sit there and go, well, what do you want to do this week? And I'm like, well, I don't know.
Sometimes you'd be
what's my choice?
I could go for kebabs. I was like, okay, let's do that. So
going to the Middle East,
Yeah. I think we did a couple big changes with this from the first time around. The first is this, that we condensed and we went to the countries we wanted to go to, and we went in a random order. So that's kind of this first piece. The other two that we did, we picked a biome, which we'll talk more about, and we picked an experience. And I think we wanted to make a connection that was more lasting. And I think of everything that we did, the experiences is what, especially our younger daughter, really connected with.
She loved that.
I mean, we went to a Chinese New Year celebration, and
awesome.
she saw the dragon dance, and she saw a bunch of martial arts being performed, which was cool. We went to
Dia de los Muertos.
Dia de los Muertos, and
the heritage, the Highland Games.
Yeah, we put their great grandmother's picture on the ofrenda at the Dia de los Muertos after she'd passed. And we went to the Highland Games, which was super cool. We went to restaurants. We tried Korean barbecue for the first time as a family and grilled at the table. And we went to cool food trucks and met a man from Colombia who was in charge of the food truck and told us all about his hometown. It was really cool. So, in absence of like a cultural event, we would go to a restaurant or a food truck or something, which was awesome. But the cultural events were really cool. When we did Carnival, we watched Carnival. That was on. We did it the same week.
I think when we did Native Peoples, we went to our local
you went to the
cultural
museum.
center. Yeah, the local cultural center. So just like being able to do that. And you're right, that was just a cool way for us to kind of have some really fun experiences. It didn't have to be every week, and you're right, sometimes it was just going out to eat.
Sometimes we just went to a restaurant or something, which was cool.
Yeah.
When we studied India, we went to the Indian grocery store and got a bunch of food and made like a feast, and that was really fun.
Yeah, just very memorable events, and also getting our kids out into the community and seeing other
it was
cultures,
fun.
I think a really cool thing that we did on this one. And it's just the experiences, like they remember those experiences.
Yeah.
They may not remember the name of the country or where that is, especially for a kindergartner, but they'll think back and go, oh yeah, I remember when we were at that thing, or we saw that thing, or we saw
the dancing.
Yeah, we saw that event or whatever, or we tried that food. They key in on it a little bit more. Maybe like in a year or two, they'll hear a country reference and they'll think back, oh, that's when mommy and daddy took me to that thing, and that was a lot of fun, and I enjoyed that,
Yeah, I think that overall we felt that every cultural event we went to, the people that were there were very happy to show their culture and discuss it and all that stuff. Because I was wondering, some of these festivals and things, I was wondering if we were going to be intruding.
Yeah.
That was one of the things I was a little worried about, like going
Never
to Dia
once.
de los Muertos.
Never once.
They couldn't have been lovelier, and wanting to explain to the kids what the different things were. And
It's like a block party down in Redmond. It was great.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
And going to the Chinese New Year
In Kirkland area, right?
celebration.
Yeah.
That was wonderful. And they were, again, so nice. We were asking questions about, well, what does this mean? Why do you have this symbol? They were so gracious and wonderful, and happy to share their cultures with us. So I think if you don't take anything else away from this, go and do cultural experiences. I think that was the best thing we could have done. Now, it's true that you do have to kind of hit countries in different orders if you want them to time with a festival event. But if you're not going to do that, and you're going to follow a strict order, then try to find a restaurant to go to. That was some of the best restaurant experiences we have, are just going to really great restaurants.
Got us to try new places and maybe find a new favorite. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah,
great
it definitely got our younger daughter, especially when we went to Korean barbecue, right? And they have all the little plates of all the different things. And she was like, she did not know. And she tried everything. And then she was like, she liked kimchi, and she liked all these things that she wouldn't have tried otherwise.
And it's funny because we do a lot of food, and that's something that's really important to us, especially when we're going around the world. It's fun for us because we get to try different foods that we otherwise wouldn't make. And then for us, expanding the palate of our children is an important thing, especially our youngest, little picky eater.
Yep.
But man, like from the start of this to the end, she is eating so many more different foods. She's trying so many different things. The number of total dinners that we can now make is like multiplying every day. So it's a great journey. We see a lot of growth through your children through these types of things.
Yeah, I think
as they experience different cultures, go to different events. You can see their eyes wide and how they're enjoying things, and seeing how they enjoy the different foods. It's really fun. I really enjoy it.
So we kept up with Universal Yum, speaking of food.
Always.
We kept up with that, but this time what we did was we saved the boxes. So we got the box. I checked the expiration on everything to make sure we would be good. And then I wrote in Sharpie on the outside of the box what country that was for.
We were able to time a few.
We were. I mean, it didn't always work out,
It was
but
cool.
mostly it did.
And if a box came in, and it was a country on the pull-in stack,
Yes.
we could easily just pull that country in. Now we have a Yum box for it. It was a nice way to go, and we had a whole video about all the different types of things we wanted to do, and we'll go ahead and link that in the beginning when we first started. Yeah, it was cool.
So it was cool. And when we didn't have a Yum box for something, but we were in an area that had an international grocery store, or there's an Asian grocery store in Linwood we'd love to go to in our local area.
Shop Smart, Shop H Smart.
H Mart, yeah. So we would.
I'm just waiting for the first person to say, that's an Army of Darkness reference. I got that one.
Yeah. So we would go there, and I would know, like, okay, we're not studying Korea now. We're going to be studying it in a month or something. But I would go ahead and stock up on the same type of thing you would get in a Universal Yums box.
Yeah, build your
and
own.
Then I would just I'd put it in a bag in the pantry, and it would be a homemade Yum box, and we would pull that out. So the kids loved it.
And our kids love snacks. So
yeah, they'll eat anything in a snack bag.
They'll do anything. They'll eat the dinner you didn't think they would eat just to get to the snacks.
Right. So that was really fun. So that was a big change we did. The other change was bringing in biomes. So one of the criticism is too hard a word. One of the things that I didn't really love about either Build Your Library or Torchlight is we didn't really connect with the science aspect. Now, Build Your Library's science is animals. So it's kind of like biomes. And I think
if you have a learner that loves animals, do it.
It's perfect, yeah. And I think for kindergarten, it is really great. We wanted to go a little bit further because sometimes I just felt like we were studying, because you're reading the animal poetry book. I think that my crux is the animal poetry book because it's just about whatever the next page was and not necessarily an animal from that country because you're just going through the book. So in this case, by going through the biome, I think that was a really neat thing. So I would look at the country and come up with, obviously many countries have lots of biomes, but I would pick one and I tried to do it so that each country would have a different one. And we of course repeated, we covered deserts several times.
Covered forests a couple times,
But we didn't do them right in order. We tried to take a break. And each time I could go to the library and get a few more things. And we tried to do some experience stuff in this way as well. We would go on a hike or we went to the ocean when we were studying marine for one, the marine aquatic biome. So that was another opportunity to bring in an experience, especially if it was a week where we didn't have a cultural experience to do. We could do a biome experience. And that was a really fun thing to do. So if you have an aquarium in your area or a zoo, and it's a great way you can do the biome and then just really lean into the animals or or you can lean into plants if you want, or insects or whatever your kids are really into. I think if you don't want to add to the planning, I totally get that, then I would use the animal study from Build Your Library. It is totally fine. Our kids didn't connect with it as well when we did it the first time. And I felt like because the biome was in our control, we could continue to build on it. And I feel like now, maybe not our younger daughter as much, but our older daughter really has a sense of the different biomes. And if you ask her about them, she can tell you a number of things about different ones. She knows the key characteristics. She knows some about not just the animals, but the plants. And, so I think that was a cool wrinkle. It was something different to do.
I think it was a worthy endeavor, which maybe goes into our next discussion point, which is we brought along an older learner. And I think the biomes and the animals for a kindergartner indistinguishable.
They're just didn't notice.
Just getting information and reading books and maybe learning a few things here or there. But for the older learner, I thought, if you're thinking about the animals or you're thinking about the biomes, you can really gear that up a little bit and really use that as an opportunity to, drive deeper learning, have a little bit more knowledge. You can do a lot more writing activities. There's a lot more there you can do to bolt on. So if you're thinking about bringing in an older learner, definitely lean into those science aspects because it's something you can really expand and really get some growth, especially for an older learner who maybe needs that. They need to learn a little bit more. It's not just some information that kind of comes in and comes out and maybe one or two things gets retained. You can really have them kind of, learn some real things, learn some real knowledge, knock off some science standards that if they're required for your your state or your locale. I liked the biomes as being that cool thing, that a more expansive science experience. Even though it was just more literature based, we didn't really do any experiments or anything. But you're right, we did have some experiences. We went out and saw things. We went out and experienced things. But
And that made a big impression on her.
It did. It did.
I think too, the other thing is that most of the YouTube videos, honestly, learning about these other countries and these videos and things, and even some of the books, they're not really kindergarten level material, right? So bringing along a 9-year-old was frankly easy because now, sure, some of the picture books were maybe a bit more juvenile than her level, but we were able to add in some audio chapter books, which was good.
But even with that, even with it being a little bit more juvenile, as you said, it's a great opportunity for you to have an early reader, kind of an emerging reader, or even a struggling reader. Give them the opportunity to read themselves, and that was something that,
or read too. She read to her younger sister quite a bit,
and that was a change that occurred. We kind of said it earlier. You'll see some changes along the way because kids are getting older, they're getting more mature, they're developing new skills, they're learning about new things, and they're finding out new things about themselves. Having that older learner be able to read to us, read to her sister, I think was a really cool little wrinkle that I know we kind of talked about it at the beginning, but it was to see it in action was really cool, and how that really lit her up. She was really excited to do this, and it almost kind of played teacher, and it was a fun thing for her to do, and she really enjoyed it. And just showing off her reading skills and how they've developed over the last year. I kind of made a joke the other night with her. I think we were driving home from dance class, and we were just talking about things that I'm proud of her for doing this year. And she was thinking, oh, her sports, practice, how well she's done with sports, or these other types of things. And I really keyed in on with her. I said, no, the thing I'm most proud of you over the last year and a half is how well you've learned to read. And that's been a big thing. And she was kind of surprised. And it really came through in this Around the World, Trekking the World kind of experiment, is seeing her read these books that, a year and a half ago, she would never have tried. And it's really cool to see her. Even some of the longer books, some of the books that we read, we did pull in some books that were a little bit more advanced for her, a little bit longer, a little bit more chaptery style, and asking her to read those or read pages from those is, I think, a really cool wrinkle that I really enjoyed. Also, with a lot of these types of things that we were bringing in, it's a lot of opportunities for her to write. Writing about biomes, writing about the experiences, doing research on the country, whatever you want to key in on. And, changing it up throughout the study is important as well. But really finding those additional skills, finding, excuses for reading, excuses for writing, to help develop those other type of, intangible skills that we're trying to do with our other curriculum that we're doing. Having our social studies curriculum be kind of a key in to our writing, to our reading, even to our science and math. Having a whole total experience, I think, is really cool. And it's something for us to think about. It doesn't have to be overthought. We don't have to overplan it. We don't have to overthink it. But just knowing that I have a resource here for my older learner to do writing, to do reading, to do these extra things.
It's a great outlet.
Yes.
She had a good time with it. We often added in an older chapter book. I was concerned about whether you would have enough time to do them all. So oftentimes what I would do is pull in an audiobook. So I would find something from the country.
Use the Yodo cards to do it,
Yeah, sometimes I had them on Yodo, make your own Yodo cards. Like when we were doing... We would study a country, and if there was an open source book, I would get it off of LibriVox and put it on to Yodo for her. But if not, just library, Libby app was great. And so it was funny, like we went through, when we did the UK, and we read Paddington, but then I had like all 6 Paddington books or something on Libby, and she just burned through all of those. So her younger sister only did 1 Paddington book, but our older daughter did like 6 Paddington books.
Yeah.
So some of these are the start of series, which was a really easy way to kind of, add extension to it.
And this was the first time in that exact experience. It was kind of weird for me as an educator, homeschooler, to offload the reading to the audio form and letting her do that on her own. I've been the vehicle for the reading, the vehicle for all the chapter books, the vehicle for all the science and everything for so long. And it was weird. It's almost like I was like letting go and having to, delegate in some respect to to the audiobooks was kind of weird for me because I always like to ask questions and whatnot, but I've got to trust that she's been able to do that. I'll have to go ahead and ask her questions about something else. But this was the first time where I started to really delegate some of the heavy reading off to my daughter, through audiobooks.
We did several of the main books via audio this time through our library, just because it was a situation where you could put on that audiobook and you guys could all do art together instead of the kids just doing art while you're standing around reading. It was great. It just took that off of your shoulders as well, which was really nice.
Especially when you have larger families and you're bringing multiple learners. I mean, I can imagine, mom or dad sitting at home having a sixth grader, a 6-year-old, maybe a 7.5-year-old, and maybe a 9-year-old, and you're doing 3 children. Offloading some of this work to that I don't think is wrong. I think it's a way for you to be efficient with your time and get the things done you need to get done.
Well, and you would start a craft or, something for art and sit there with them and listen with them. It wasn't like we were totally outsourcing it. So I think you can still find ways to have connection. You can still discuss what you read and what they think about it. You don't have to actually read every line yourselves. So I think that's a nice wrinkle too. So I like those things that we did. Bringing our older learner in, people often ask, what age would be right to do this? I really think, people do PhDs on cultural studies, right? So, you can go as in-depth as you want to go. And I think that a lot of these books, they worked. Even for a 9-year-old, it was totally fine. She was still interested.
She's a 9-year-old who loves books. So you could read her a simple poem book or you can read her a chapter book. She'll love it.
She was great.
Regardless.
But also lots of the movies and things that we watched, almost none of it is like built for kindergarten. If you think about kindergarten and how we were in our daughter's kindergarten class the other day, she does it just a couple days a week for their little graduation, and they played some videos that were targeted at kindergartners, and I forgot just how
our 9-year-olds just
but I forgot how simplistic they are. Almost nothing that we do in this curriculum or the study that from the media to the books is that simplistic. So I think it's definitely fine to bring along an older learner. Worst case scenario, you find that you need to level up a few more of the books, but the movies that you watch and things are enjoyable for adults. So it would be fine for an older learner. And there's lots you can do, whether it's researching the countries and writing papers. Maybe you want to make some sort of like a lap book or binder out of it with the interesting things. Torchlight has a kind of a reporter type aspect.
Journal or
where you're supposed to report on the different countries. I think that is, my opinion has always been that that's too advanced for a kinder curriculum, but I think it would be great if you have an older learner coming along to do something like that, where we had our daughter being the travel guide. So that was part of the writing assignments, is we had this cool travel guide template, and she would fill out okay, here's your whirlwind 8-day trip to Peru, and here's what you're gonna do, and she would write about it.
She's all about
and she would draw, and so that's one of the ways that we brought her in, was to kind of make her a travel agent. What would we see? And then we brought in some math with how much would those tickets cost, and the hotels, and how much would it cost per day to eat, and so she would ask Google questions and back and forth. And I think that was a really fun experience for her to get to do something a bit elevated. So come up with a project of your own that you think that your student might really like. I know it was definitely more fun to do the cooking this time around with an older student able to help me with the younger student and the food. We definitely got more into that.
I definitely felt this time around we did a lot more cooking that was a little bit more elevated.
Yeah,
we didn't have to, the first time we went around, we had a 2-year-old kind of climbing up the, putting her hands in everything. This time it really felt like you had 2 chefs in the kitchen helping you out.
Which was really fun.
It was a lot of fun.
Overall, I think this was the first time that we've done a long study that was totally freeform. Every other time we've taken a curriculum, I have definitely adapted, because I can't not. I've always adapted, tweaked things,
but
added
it was
things.
open the binder, flip to the next page experience.
Right.
And this time it wasn't that. It felt a lot more freeform, which is, I feel a little different. It's off-brand for us.
It is a bit off-brand. But I want to say that if you've never done that, if you've never done even a section of time freeform, it was kind of freeing.
It was.
I-
Didn't
not
feel
that-
so intense.
Right. I think it's great to buy the curriculums, support the creators. They do a wonderful
Absolutely.
job. It gives you so many great ideas. I don't think that this would have been the study that it was if I didn't have the knowledge from those two curriculums that I could use and play with and then make it my own. So I think that they're fantastic resources, whether you use them to just inform your own thing or whether you follow them to a T or adapt them or whatever. I think that they're very important. So I'm not suggesting not to buy something, but if you're like, I really want to study, this time in history or this subject, buy a curriculum. Use it to inform how you work. Follow it if you want to. But I think that there was something really relaxing about this. I wasn't as stressed about it as I was the first time around.
Well, compare and contrast, because we're going right back to the old style where we're going week by week.
We're going to adapt it.
We're going to adapt, but it's going to be still the print. We'll see how we like it. Yeah, we'll compare and contrast.
It's going to be a little bit different. Yeah, coming off of this more freeform experience.
Be a little bit more rigid.
Don't be afraid to go off-road, is I guess what I'm saying.
I agree.
Because it definitely was fun. And I think a bit looser. And we as homeschoolers love to make things our own. That's kind of our brand, right? We love to do things the way that our kids need them and we need them, that fit into our lives and our interests and all of that. So this is your permission to go off-road, to do things your own way.
The last thing we did a lot of, which was a lot of gaming. Obviously, we do a lot of gaming. I think we did more gaming specific stuff this time than we did the last go around. We had a younger child who we didn't really want to get into the games because she was maybe a little destructive. But this time she was the one that we were targeting with the games, and the older one would love to come along with all the games. So doing a lot more games this time was a lot of fun.
We have a great video with all the games that we wanted to use, and we'll link it below, and so you can see and look at all the games that we use. There's a few, more than a few, but there's some great games there if you want to purchase games, or if your library has a game library. I wish our library system had a game library.
Well, we got enough games. We are our own game library.
Well, that's kind of true. So you're right. We did play more games because our 5, now 6-year-old was able to play.
And not just that's kind of the fun thing is once you play one game, you finish, you play another game and another game. So I think we've played more games during this stretch than I think we've done in a long time. And I think that was a nice little wrinkle there as well. Just, as children mature, as the children change, as our homeschool evolves and changes, as they get older, it was a lot more fun. I did feel like there was more independence in this one, especially with our older learner. It was probably the first time where I really embraced a little bit more independent learning, independent activities. I thought that was kind of interesting. It was a different wrinkle. She's now aging into, she's going to be a 4th grader this coming year. She's just wrapping up her 3rd grade year now. And it was interesting. She's becoming a grown woman. She's getting very tall.
Yeah.
And
I wonder where she gets that from.
I wonder where she gets that. And then it's just been I've had to learn as a homeschooler. Again, we always say this. We always are changing. We're always evolving. We're always learning new things. But as a homeschooler, I've had to learn how to let go a little bit, how to delegate a little bit more, and also give her the space to become a little bit more independent on her own learning, trusting her sometimes, but verifying that she's doing her work and getting her work done. So that was a big wrinkle change for me this last year. That's something that I haven't done before. So, kind of getting used to doing that. And then obviously as my youngest is becoming more, more mature, she's now next year, she'll be in the 1st grade, her reading, her math and everything. There was a lot of evolution over this span that there was a lot of growth. It was interesting. It was different. It was dynamic. I had to make some pivots and tweaks. But as it gets old, it just gets different. It doesn't get any things where one problem gets left in the dust, a new problem evolves, and we have to learn and we have to adapt. So this was a great experience. I had a great time.
This was the first time that we ever had 2 doing the same thing. That's also
a
new one for us.
It's my first year under my belt actually doing homeschooling with 2 children.
Doing the same, because they do their independent reading and math, but doing the same thing together. Our younger has always just been kind of in the room for the social studies work, and this is the first time they did it together. I think what this meant for my planning was that I had to have a healthy mix of things that both kids were going to enjoy and the other things that the other one would tolerate. So that was also a piece of it. I think it could be difficult to use a curriculum exactly as written if you have learners with two different learning styles like ours have, because it's kind of made one way. I still stand by lit-based curriculums are great, but we definitely did have to adapt for a child who wants things to be hands-on and who wants to have more experiences and who doesn't like to be read to quite as much. So I think there's definitely a need to find the right balance if you've got more than one learner doing whatever study it is. So I think you'll probably, if you have more than one learner, you'll have to adapt. I think this does go to show that you can do, right, that these girls are 3.5 years apart, and we basically did most of the chapter books and main books from Build Your Library and some from Torchlight, and that's all supposed to be kinder.
Yeah.
I feel like
it didn't feel off. It didn't feel like we were struggling.
Our 9-year-old still loved reading Paddington, for example.
We were a little apprehensive of doing this because we were kind of like, are we on the edge of the merge period?
Well, is it gonna be too young for our older daughter? Are we gonna be holding her back in some way?
I never felt that was the case. I never felt that was the case. We were worried about that at the beginning. I think my biggest challenge through this was, before we would do the social studies curriculum and I would do reading and math with my oldest, and my youngest was preschooler. She was just kind of doing whatever she was doing. The hardest thing for me, and maybe you'll experience this at home, even though we were doing the one social studies curriculum, I'm now doing 2 reading curriculums and 2 math curriculums, and I saw the amount of work that I had to do and how I had to manage the homeschool. I'm doing reading here and doing math over here and sending one child away here so I can work with this one. That was a big change. It added a lot more time. Not that the social studies curriculum added more time, a little bit, because I had to kind of like adapt it to the 9-year-old. But just having the double reading curriculums, double math curriculums, and the social studies curriculum definitely added more time. Now, I don't think it's going to add appreciably more now because there's going to be a lot more independent work, but the work that they're doing is going to become more difficult, especially with my oldest, when she's now starting to write and she may need more assistance there, and there may be a little bit more nuance and a little bit more discussion that's necessary to talk about certain types of concepts and whatnot. It's not just simple, all right, we're doing phonics, we're doing our math and whatnot. So that was a big thing that I had to kind of come to grips with, and how to manage that time and find the best path through that. And it took a little while for me to find kind of that middle period. And obviously with our busy schedules that we all have, it was hard to fit it in. So
it definitely wasn't the star of the show. The last time we did it, there was more time to do it than now.
We were also in the middle of the pandemic when that happened, and so we weren't going anywhere.
Right.
We weren't doing anything, and so we had all the time in the world to read all the books. But now it was like, oh yeah, we have our parent partnership, we have all the classes we're at, we have double dance classes, double sports, and it was just more this time. And so in some respects, I was happy that it was a little bit less.
It was a little bit looser. Yeah, we didn't do all the things.
It felt more freeform, and we could fill it in where we had to, maybe on the weekends, maybe on Friday mornings, whatever the time was, we were able to slot it all in. Because I felt like I had a little bit more freedom, it was nice. And having to kind of like find my path through our busy schedule to do all the things, it was a little bit of a challenge. And I'm sure you guys at home have some. Put your comments below and tell us how you manage it as well. That'd be nice.
I think that the nice thing about this type of study is that it was easy for us to take family time to support it. So
the movies.
We could take family time for movies, dinner time, and I like to try new recipes anyway, and
family outings.
Okay. Oh, hey, we're going to go out to lunch as a family today. Oh, let's go to that restaurant, right?
Yeah.
So we were able to do things to support it, because you're right, there wasn't as much time as we had when it was just one, and we were all kind of home,
stuck at home. Yeah.
So it was different. It was a different experience for us. I think that ultimately, whatever you decide to do, just know that you can adapt, that you can leave stuff behind that isn't perfect, that you grab books from the library, don't buy them, just get things from the library, that there's plenty of good books out there. Add experiences wherever you can.
Absolutely.
Don't be afraid to outsource to the audiobook version of that chapter book. you have our permission. It's fine.
Yes.
Just don't be hard on yourself because we're all very busy, and to try to find time to do absolutely everything it says in one of these curriculums. Or if you do your own homegrown thing and you plan all the best laid plans, it doesn't always work out the way we planned it to be. So I think that after having done this second time, I think what we're really learning is just kind of like, we're going to do our best. We're going to make it as memorable as we can, and we're not going to sweat it if we didn't get to everything we wanted to or didn't all come together perfectly, because in the end of the day, this is just about enrichment for our kids, and it definitely was enriching.
Yeah.
So
definitely stick it out. I know we've seen some people who we've met that maybe they'll go a month or two and then they'll kind of like fizzle out for a month and they'll have to pick it back up. Stick with it. You know, if your week is light and it just doesn't work out, it's okay. Move on to the next country.
Right.
Don't feel like you've got to do everything.
I have to check off all the boxes before I can move on. And
just, hey, listen, this week fell apart. Thailand was really short this week. We read 2 books and we ate a little bit of food. Good enough. Let's move on.
Right. And choose things you're interested in too. I think that was one of the things you were like, oh, I'm interested in this food, so we chose that place. Or, we have family history here. Or there's a couple of great movies we want to watch that are like, pick things that you're
or you want to spend a whole month in the country.
Yeah, do that too. There's no like, you only spend a week or spend 2.
Do whatever,
Do whatever you and your kids are really into. If you're totally getting into a country, you're geeking out on all the food and the great movies and everything, and all the awesome books, then do it.
Yeah, we had some friends, obviously this is around the world, but they were doing Ancient Civilizations, which is the other Build Your Library, which we vlogged our way through.
Yeah, level 1.
And they spent the whole summer in Greece, right? Because their kids loved Greece.
They loved all the Greek mythology.
So they just stuck it out for 3 months.
All
And
right.
it's okay to do that. It's okay to skip a week. It's okay to a week falls apart.
Or eject. You started a country and you're like, none of us are digging this.
We're out.
Just move on. I think the whole purpose is to enrich our kids, to show them that there's a big wide world out there with lots of interesting people and different cultures and diverse backgrounds and interesting food, and it's just to broaden their horizons. And so anything that we do towards that is great. Whether your week on India falls apart, or whether you spend 3 weeks on France or whatever, it's cool. It's all good. I'm glad we did this again with our younger daughter.
Thank you for all your hard work.
Yeah, so we'll be moving on. We're gonna do a science summer here. We're going to do space science all summer because we never get enough time to really focus on science. And you love science, I love science.
We're gonna do exactly what we're gonna cram it all in to three.
But we're not going to do social studies. We're going to just focus on science and make that our kind of primary focus. So anyway, stay tuned. We're going to do a video all about the overview of what we plan to do with space science and how we plan to make it really neat and enriching for our girls. So we hope that you will join us.
And as always, we're doing 2 students. So if you're interested in having 2 students come along on your studies, that's the plan from here on out. So
yeah, because I can't do two different curriculums or 2 different levels.
So if you know somebody who's like, hey, I got 2 students, I want to do 1 curriculum, hit the subscribe button and share. We'll see you guys next week. Thanks.